Hey everyone, glad to have you back here at Book Demystified. Today's book is Smart Women Finish Rich by David Bach. And if you've ever felt like you're working harder than ever but your bank account doesn't seem to reflect it, or if you've ever looked at your monthly expenses and wondered where all your money actually goes, this one's going to speak directly to you. Picture this. You're 28, sitting in your Honda Civic in the Starbucks parking lot, staring at your bank account on your phone. It's 3 days before payday, you've got exactly $47 to your name, and you just spent $6 on a latte because, honestly, you deserved it after the week you've had. Sound familiar? You're not alone. David Bach wrote this book because he noticed something fascinating in his financial planning practice. Women were consistently outsmarting men when it came to investing in financial decisions, yet they were arriving at retirement with significantly less money. The question that haunted him was simple. If women are naturally better with money, why aren't they finishing rich? The answer, as it turns out, has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with the invisible money traps that most of us fall into without even realizing it. Bach discovered that the women who did finish rich weren't necessarily making more money than everyone else. They were just doing a few specific things differently. And here's the kicker. These weren't complicated Wall Street strategies or trust fund advantages. They were simple, practical habits that any woman could start implementing today, regardless of her current income or financial situation. What really got to me about this book was how Bach starts with a story about his grandmother, Rose Bach, who worked as a manicurist for most of her life. She never made what you'd call big money, but when she passed away, she left behind a 7-figure estate. 7 figures from doing nails. The secret wasn't some lucky stock pick or inheritance. It was what Bach calls the latte factor, combined with something he terms paying yourself first. But before you roll your eyes thinking this is another lecture about skipping your morning coffee, stay with me. Because what Bach discovered goes way deeper than lattes, and it's probably going to change how you think about money forever. The first thing Bach wants you to understand is that most women have been conditioned to think about money all wrong. We've been taught to budget by cutting expenses, denying ourselves, and basically living like financial monks until we've saved enough to start living. But here's what's wild. That approach fails 90% of the time. Not because women aren't disciplined enough, but because it's psychologically backwards. Bach argues that successful wealth building starts with abundance, not scarcity. Instead of figuring out what you can't afford, you start by deciding what you can afford to pay yourself. Let me explain what I mean with a scenario that might hit close to home. Sarah is 32, works in marketing, makes $65,000 a year, and lives in Denver. Every month she gets her paycheck, pays her rent, car payments, student loans, groceries, utilities, and by the time she's covered everything else, there's maybe $50 left over. She tells herself she'll save it, but then her friend's birthday comes up, or her car needs an oil change, or she needs new work clothes, and poof, it's gone. This is what Bach calls the pay everyone else first system, and it's financial quicksand. Sarah isn't failing because she lacks willpower. She's failing because she's using a system designed to fail. Bach's approach flips this entirely. Instead of saving what's left over, you save first, then live on what's left over. It sounds simple, but the psychology behind it is profound. When you pay yourself first, you're essentially telling your brain that your future self is as important as your current bills. You're creating what Bach calls a wealth mindset instead of a survival mindset. Here's how it works in practice. Sarah decides to pay herself first, let's say 10% of her gross income, which works out to about $540 a month. Before she pays rent, before she pays anything else, that money goes directly into her investment account. Now, you might be thinking, but wait, what if she can't afford her bills? This is where Bach's research gets really interesting. He studied hundreds of women who implemented this system, and guess what happened? They found the money. Not from magic, but through something psychologists call creative constraint. When you artificially limit your available spending money, your brain automatically starts finding ways to make it work. Sarah discovers she can meal prep on Sundays instead of buying lunch every day. She realizes she's been paying for 3 different streaming services she barely uses. She starts carpooling with her coworker twice a week. None of these changes feel like deprivation because they're in service of something bigger, her future wealth. Bach calls this the automatic millionaire principle. And the numbers are honestly staggering. A woman who starts saving $540 a month at age 32, investing it in a diversified portfolio earning an average of 8% return, will have over $1.2 million by age 65. Let me say that again, $1.2 million. And that's assuming she never gets a raise, never increases her savings rate, and never adds a single extra dollar. The compound interest alone turns her into a millionaire. Now, let's talk about the infamous latte factor, which has probably been misunderstood by more people than any other financial concept in history. The latte factor isn't really about lattes. I mean, it is, but it's also about so much more. Bach uses the daily coffee purchase as a metaphor for all the small, unconscious spending decisions we make that seem insignificant in the moment, but add up to massive amounts over time. Let's do some math that might make your jaw drop. Jennifer lives in Chicago, works in accounting, and considers herself pretty frugal. She doesn't shop for designer clothes or take expensive vacations, but every morning on her way to work, she stops at Dunkin' for a medium latte and a breakfast sandwich. $4.50. That's it. Seems reasonable, right? She works hard. She deserves her morning routine. But let's follow Jennifer's $4.50 for 20 years. $4.50, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. She's got vacation time. That's $1,125 per year. Over 20 years, assuming she can invest that money and earn a 7% return, Jennifer's morning routine costs her $58,412, nearly $60,000, for coffee and a sandwich. Now, I'm not telling you to give up your morning coffee if it brings you joy, but I am asking you to be conscious about it. Bach's point is that we all have latte factors, those small recurring expenses that we don't really think about, but that quietly drain our wealth-building potential. For some people, it's the daily coffee. For others, it might be the habit of ordering takeout twice a week instead of cooking, or the monthly subscription boxes that seemed like a good idea 6 months ago, or the tendency to grab a bottle of water at the airport instead of bringing one from home. The beauty of the latte factor is that it's not about deprivation, it's about awareness. Once you see where your money is really going, you can make conscious choices about what's truly worth it to you and what isn't. Bach suggests doing a latte factor challenge for 1 week. Write down every single purchase you make under $10. Don't change your behavior, just track it. At the end of the week, add it up and multiply by 52. The number might shock you. I tried this myself, and I discovered I was spending about $40 a week on what I call convenience purchases. Things like buying lunch when I forgot to pack one, grabbing a soda at the gas station, picking up batteries at CVS instead of Amazon because I needed them right away. That $40 a week added up to over $2,000 a year. $2,000 that could have been working for my future instead of disappearing into the black hole of minor conveniences. But here's what's brilliant about Bach's approach. He doesn't tell you to eliminate all these expenses. He tells you to redirect them. Take that money you were spending unconsciously and make it work for you consciously. This is where the pay-yourself-first system becomes really powerful. Instead of relying on willpower to resist the latte, you've already moved that money out of your checking account before you can spend it. The latte money isn't available because it's already been invested in your future. Let's talk about something that might make some of you uncomfortable, but it's one of the most important things Bach discusses in this book. The relationship between women and money that goes way deeper than budgeting or investing. Bach argues that many women have been socialized to have what he calls a financial inferiority complex. We've been taught, sometimes explicitly, but more often implicitly, that we're not as good with money as men, that finances are too complicated for us to understand, or that we should find a man to handle the money stuff. This conditioning runs deep, and it's costing women literally millions of dollars over their lifetimes. Here's a statistic that blew my mind. Women live longer than men. They're more likely to be single at some point in their lives. They earn less over their careers due to pay gaps and time off for caregiving, yet they're also less likely to invest in the stock market. It's like a perfect storm of factors that conspire to keep women financially vulnerable. Bach calls this the confidence gap, and he argues it's not about intelligence or capability, it's about the messages we've internalized about our relationship with money. Let me tell you about Maria, one of the case studies in Bach's book. Maria is a nurse in Phoenix, 41 years old, divorced with 2 kids. She's incredibly competent at her job. She literally saves lives on a regular basis.
But when it comes to her 401k, she feels completely overwhelmed. She's been putting her contributions in a money market account, earning less than 1% because stocks seem too risky. Meanwhile, her male colleagues with the same job and the same income are investing in stock mutual funds and building wealth significantly faster.
The difference isn't intelligence or risk tolerance, it's confidence. Bach spends a lot of time in the book addressing this confidence gap, and he does it in a way that's both practical and empowering. He breaks down investing concepts in language that's accessible without being condescending, and he provides specific steps for women who are starting from zero financial knowledge. One of his key insights is that women actually make better investors than men when they get started. Studies show that women research their investments more thoroughly, they're less likely to panic and sell during market downturns, and they're less susceptible to hot stock tips and get-rich-quick schemes. The problem isn't ability, it's confidence to get started. Hey, if you're enjoying our free book summaries and want to support what we do, there are a few easy ways to help. You can subscribe to the channel, become a member, or grab the book using our affiliate link in the description. And if you'd like to go a step further, you can also leave a tip via PayPal or UPI. The link's below. Every bit of support helps us keep creating valuable content for you. Bach's solution is what he calls the Smart Women's three-basket approach to building wealth. The first basket is your security basket. This is your emergency fund and safe guaranteed investments. The second basket is your growth basket. This is where you invest for long-term wealth building, primarily through stock mutual funds and ETFs. The third basket is your dream basket. This is money you set aside for specific goals like a house, a vacation, or starting a business. The beauty of this system is that it gives you permission to be both conservative and aggressive with your money at the same time. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket, but you're also not being so conservative that inflation eats away your purchasing power over time. For someone like Maria, Bach would recommend starting with something like 60% in the security basket, 30% in the growth basket, and 10% in the dream basket. As she gets more comfortable and confident, she can adjust these percentages to be more aggressive with the growth basket. The key is to start somewhere, even if it's not perfect, rather than waiting until you feel completely confident, because that day might never come. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of what Bach calls the automatic millionaire system, because this is where the book goes from inspiring to incredibly practical. The system is based on one core principle. If it's not automatic, it probably won't happen. Bach has observed that the women who successfully build wealth don't rely on discipline or willpower to save and invest every month. They set up systems that save and invest for them automatically, so they never have to think about it or make the decision over and over again. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Every time you have to make a decision about whether to save money this month, you're using what psychologists call decision fatigue. By the end of a long day of making choices about everything from what to eat for breakfast to whether to respond to that email from your boss, your brain is tired of making decisions. And when your brain is tired, it defaults to the easiest option, which is usually spending the money on something immediate rather than investing it in something future. Bach's automatic system eliminates this decision fatigue by making the wealth-building choices once and then letting technology handle the rest. Here's how it works. First, you set up automatic transfers from your checking account to your investment accounts on the same day your paycheck hits your account. The money is gone before you can think about spending it on something else. Second, you automate your bill payments, so you never have to worry about late fees or missed payments destroying your credit score. Third, you automate your debt payments above the minimum, so you're consistently paying down debt without having to think about it every month. Fourth, you automate your charitable giving, because Bach argues that generosity is a wealth-building habit that attracts more abundance into your life. Let me walk you through how this would look for someone like Amanda, a software developer in Austin making $75,000 a year. Amanda decides to pay herself first at a rate of 15%, which works out to about $937 per month. On the day her bi-weekly paycheck hits her account,
$468 automatically transfers to her investment account. She never sees it in her checking account, so she never misses it. She's also got her rent, utilities, car payment, and minimum credit card payments on autopay, so she never has to worry about forgetting a bill destroying her credit score. And she's got an extra $100 automatically going toward her credit card debt above the minimum payment, so she's paying it down faster without having to think about it every month. The beauty of this system is that once it's set up, Amanda's wealth building happens in the background of her life. She doesn't have to be a financial genius or have incredible willpower. She just has to be smart enough to set up the system once and then let it run. Bach estimates that this automation alone increases the likelihood of wealth-building success by over 80%, simply because it removes the human tendency to procrastinate or make excuses.
One thing that sets Bach apart from a lot of financial advisors is his emphasis on what he calls the power of compound interest and time. Bach dedicates significant space to helping readers truly understand compound interest, not just intellectually, but emotionally, because he believes that once you really get it, you can't help but start investing immediately. Compound interest is what Albert Einstein supposedly called the most powerful force in the universe, and Bach uses story after story to show why. Here's one that might change how you think about starting early. Lisa and Emily are both 25 years old and working at the same company, making the same salary. Lisa decides to start investing $2,000 a year in a 401k immediately. Emily decides to wait until she's 35 to start investing, but then she'll invest $4,000 a year, twice as much as Lisa. Both women invest until they're 65, earning an average return of 8% annually. Who do you think ends up with more money? If you guessed Emily because she invested twice as much per year, you'd be wrong. Lisa, who started 10 years earlier but invested half as much annually, ends up with about $548,000. Emily, who waited 10 years but then invested aggressively, ends up with about $477,000. Lisa has $71,000 more, even though she invested $80,000 less over her lifetime. That's the power of compound interest and time. Those first 10 years when Lisa was investing and Emily wasn't, turn out to be worth more than all the extra money Emily invested later. This example hits me hard every time I think about it because it shows how expensive waiting can be. I know so many women in their 30s and 40s who say they'll start investing seriously once they pay off their student loans, or once they get married, or once they buy a house, or once their kids are older. And I get it. There's always something that feels more urgent than investing for a future that seems impossibly far away. But Bach's research shows that waiting is the most expensive financial mistake you can make. Every year you delay costs you exponentially more than the year before. Bach has a concept he calls the miracle of compound interest, and he illustrates it with what happens to $1 invested at different ages. $1 invested at age 20 and earning 8% annually becomes $21.72 by age 65. That same dollar invested at age 30 becomes $10.06 by age 65. Invested at age 40, it becomes $4.66. Invested at age 50, it becomes $2.16. The same dollar, the same rate of return, but wildly different outcomes based purely on when you start. This is why Bach is so passionate about getting women to start investing immediately, even if it's just $25 a month. $25 a month might not seem like much, but if you start at age 25 and invest it consistently at 8% annual returns, you'll have over $65,000 by retirement. And here's what's really beautiful about this. Once you start and see how the numbers grow, you naturally want to increase your contributions. Bach calls this compound motivation. As your account balance grows, you become more motivated to feed it, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerates your wealth building. Bach also tackles something that many financial advisors are uncomfortable discussing, the financial realities that many women face that make traditional financial advice feel impossible to follow. Things like the gender pay gap, time out of the workforce for caregiving responsibilities, the likelihood of divorce or widowhood, and the longer lifespans that require more retirement savings. Bach doesn't sugarcoat these challenges, but he also doesn't use them as excuses for why women can't build wealth.
Instead, he provides specific strategies for overcoming each obstacle. For the gender pay gap, Bach advocates for women to become aggressive negotiators of their salary and to always be developing skills that increase their market value. For career interruptions, he recommends building larger emergency funds and staying involved in financial planning even during periods when you're not earning income. For the possibility of divorce or widowhood, he insists that every woman, regardless of marital status, needs to be financially literate and involved in all family financial decisions. For longer lifespans, he recommends that women aim to save 15 to 20% of their income for retirement, compared to the 10 to 12% often recommended for men. The key insight throughout all of this is that women's financial planning needs to be more robust and flexible than men's, because women's lives tend to be more complex and unpredictable. But complexity doesn't mean impossible. It just means you need better systems and earlier starts. Bach tells the story of Janet, who was 35 and had been renting the same apartment in Sacramento for 8 years.
Her rent had gone from $1,200 to $2,000 over those 8 years, and she felt like she was just throwing money away every month. But she was scared of buying because she didn't have a big down payment saved up, and she'd heard horror stories about people getting underwater on their mortgages. Bach walked Janet through the math of continuing to rent versus buying with a small down payment, and the numbers were eye-opening. Even with mortgage insurance and higher monthly payments, Janet would be building equity every month instead of just paying for temporary housing. More importantly, her housing payment would be locked in, protecting her from future rent increases. Bach helped Janet find a first-time homebuyer program that allowed her to purchase with just 3% down, and within 5 years, her house had appreciated enough that she had over $60,000 in equity. That equity became the foundation for her overall wealth-building strategy. The key insight here isn't that everyone should buy a house. It's that homeownership can be a powerful wealth-building tool when approached strategically. Let me wrap this up with the most important takeaway from Bach's entire system, because this is the thing that can change your life starting today. Bach argues that the difference between women who finish rich and women who don't isn't intelligence, luck, inheritance, or even income level. It's simply this. The women who finish rich make their financial future a priority and take consistent action toward building wealth, while the women who don't keep waiting for the right time to start. There's never a perfect time to begin building wealth. There's never enough money to start. There's never a completely clear financial picture. But there's also never a wrong time to start paying yourself first, even if it's just $10 a month. Bach's challenge to every reader is to stop thinking and start doing. Don't spend 6 months researching the perfect investment strategy. Don't wait until you've paid off all your debt. Don't postpone action until you have a bigger emergency fund or a higher salary or fewer family obligations. Pick a percentage to pay yourself first, even if it's just 1% of your income. Set up the automatic transfer and begin. The confidence will come from action, not the other way around. The knowledge will develop as you go. The results will compound over time. But none of that happens until you start. Bach ends the book with a promise. Any woman who implements his system, paying herself first, automating her finances, and investing for the long term, will be richer 5 years from now than she is today, regardless of what happens to the economy, the stock market, or her career. That's not a guarantee about specific returns or account balances. It's a promise about the trajectory of your financial life when you take control of it instead of hoping someone else will take care of you. The women who finish rich aren't the ones with the highest incomes or the fanciest investment strategies. They're the ones who understand that their financial security is their responsibility, and they're willing to make the small sacrifices today that create the big rewards tomorrow. They're the ones who automate their wealth building so it happens regardless of how busy or stressed or distracted they get. And most importantly, they're the ones who start before they feel ready, because they understand that waiting is the most expensive mistake they can make. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make today. The question isn't whether you can afford to start building wealth. The question is whether you can afford not to. And the answer to that question is probably sitting in your checking account right now, disguised as a latte.